Bakugou Katsuki and Yuno Grinberryall. My thoughts on both these characters have changed so much that it scares me. Maybe it's due to me growing and stopping my pettiness, but I've learned to put myself in their shoes. Nothing you hate about a character changes their circumstances. Bakugo is a victim of his environment, as is Yuno, but in completely opposite ways, not in how they're treated, but in how they react. First off, let's start with everyone's favorite hothead. Katsuki Bakugo earning the quirk explosion always had his ego propped up nonstop, as the adults in his life failed to realize how treating him like the second coming of Jesus Christ might have stumped him in the future. Bakugo isn't at fault for thinking himself superior. He was a kid. Remember what it's like to be a kid? You lose your mind over the smallest moments if you weren't being catered to. Combine that with a society as toxic as that of My Hero, and you create a monster. This is why I'm glad we have Horikoshi currently exploring the biases and unfairness of the world these kids are forced to deal with. For example, Himiko Toga was told to suppress herself and was called not a child but a monster, unlike Bakugo, who was called a genius when his quirk could kill someone in a much worse fashion than Toga's. The only difference between these two quirks is that one is more flashy and sellable. Toga can't help how she feels, and it is shown through the manga and anime. In fact, it's damaging to ask someone with a quirk such as hers to repress herself. Hero society has made a bubble in which those allowed in must be normal, and this ideal is ingrained in Bakugo, making him judge Izuku for having no powers, treating him with disrespect as if he were a second-class citizen. The way Bakugo sees things eventually does change, of course, as he realizes his own shortcomings. Class 1A made him realize how he saw things so warped. And of course, people won't change that easily. They just don't. And a core part of Bakugo will always be about pride now. And even I had a problem with how he didn't seem to change much after his apology, but that's the point. Bakugo is who he is, and a part of him will always be about being rugged, extremely forward, maybe a little vulgar, but he apologized to Izuku. He put himself on the line for him. He acknowledged his inferiority complex to his hero, remembering his inability to even let All Might change his mind when he thought of leaving UA. And actually, going back to a previous point, Bakugo didn't earn his quirk. Aside from One for All, no other natural quirk is earned. This is left up to fate and genetics, as he never should have gotten the power he did, honestly. His father has acidic sweat, and his mother can make her skin flawless with her abilities. At most, Masaru Bakugo can only create explosions by rubbing his hands together, and his quirk cannot allow him to forcibly secrete his sweat the same way Bakugo can. He really did get lucky, but he confuses this for being the natural way things should have gone, and that is where he was wrong, and no one ever told him otherwise. Yuno, in comparison, earned the power of Bell and his wind magic mastery. One isn't simply blessed by mana or loved by it. I believe the term Tabata uses for this is to describe those who have great ability in manipulating it. What it means to be loved by mana is to have enough skill to make mana bend to your will, because otherwise, characters like Luck should have the same amount of prowess as Yuno, since he has very good detection of magic, and it would be quite bizarre for only certain mages like Yuno to be quote unquote blessed by mana, and makes it sound quite bizarre as if he's literally walking with plot armor. We'll go back to Bakugo in a bit, but let's focus on Yuno. The first time I saw him, I despised Yuno. Like the plague. I mean, the first words you hear from him is used to absolutely roast Asta like he's worth nothing. I almost exploded. Like, how dare you be so arrogant for no reason? What's your deal? But now I wish I understood how much Yuno actually appreciates Asta. He makes fun of him not because he believes he's above him, but because Asta is someone strong enough to not be affected by such petty words. Everything he has ever done has led to where he is now, and it is all for the sake of facing his rival head on and to show who's truly worthy to be Wizard King. Yuno's actions can be misconstrued as that of complete apathy and just being a jerk, but that's only if you don't understand nuance. And as much as brothers as they are, this isn't just a competition. If one can't handle the burden of being strong, there is no hope if you have all that power to begin with, all the power in the world. Yuno was so sure Asta would definitely get chosen by Grimoire, he actually got pissed that he didn't get one. Now looking back at it, Yuno isn't mad at Asta or ignoring him or belittling him. It's like he's cursing the world. He looks to be in disbelief. And when Asta gets a Grimoire, he gets a smile that shows how happy he is. He's awkward and tries to show how worthy he himself is by showing bravado and putting on a mask. All those who scorn Yuno for being a commoner before finding out he was a royal prove the very point I'm making in this video, in that without realizing it, I basically became like those nobles myself. The only difference is I didn't hate him for being a commoner, but for the type of character he was, a type I never tried to understand. As you look closer in the panels of the manga, the more you realize Yuno actually always has this persona and barrier up. Contrary to what he wants everyone to think, he's still just a scared little kid that instead of being as charismatic as Asta shows his power through the one thing he was blessed with, his magic. And that is why when he fails against Zenon, he screams in anger, this being the one time the true Yuno ever shows himself. The frustrated child, tired of rising so high, yet failing to finish his promises when it comes time to complete them. All he ever was praised for was incredible magic prowess, and that is why he was able to earn the trust of his comrades, and yet despite all of that, he couldn't win. Well, not yet. Yuno doesn't ever want to become the person he was before, someone who is a liability, forced to watch those he cares about just being hurt. His scenario with getting his captain back mirrors Asta fighting for his pendant, and Zenon represents a Yuno who is depraved and lost all reason to fight and instead fell into depravity. That is why unlocking his true power just to keep this natural order he himself has willed into existence, now in retrospect actually makes it more emotional. Which is why when Belle says for the first time she feels she has really met the real him, it really touched me. It's easy to compare the likes of Yuno to basic anime stereotypes, like saying he's Black Clover Sasuke, because he's the rival to Asta, the bubbly loud idiot that never gives up. But just like Asta is nothing like Naruto, Yuno is nothing like Sasuke. Sasuke lost all that he ever had. Despite being an orphan, Yuno grew up loved. What drives him isn't the fall of Asta, but his rise. He wants to face Asta at his best, but if Asta can't match up, it's okay because Asta won't get bitter. He's not going to feel any type of way. That's what makes Asta a worthy rival. Asta is always the bigger man, and unlike Naruto, he is willing to accept the criticisms of people and even affirm them and then prove them wrong. And more than ever, Yuno has never looked more confident than in the current arc, and it's good to see his character arc coming to a close in such a way. Meanwhile, Bakugo is, like I said, brash, arrogant, has a bit of an inferiority complex. While Yuno struggles with anxiety, finding his true self, the more media may criticize them for the way they used to be and the way they are now, the more they actually prove the point of the authors and what they actually made trying to make people think about. I don't like to attribute discoveries I made to something Tabata Horikoshi or any other mangaka did and say it was all planned, as that actually ruins their work. They simply made Yuno and Bakugo so human that no one knows what to think of them sometimes. Most of all Bakugo, but the one thing most never keep in mind is that at the end of the day, both are at a young age and with a lot of pressure on them. Bakugo was put up as a prodigy, as was Yuno. But for Yuno, he had an entire village's fate on his back. His failure meant the change he wanted would never come. And for Bakugo, admitting he was still dealing with a lot and had to reevaluate maybe his own reaffirmations about himself and how the world is, means that he would have to also reevaluate his entire life. I would understand why he would react the way that he does in the anime and manga. Now, mind you, they're not perfect characters at all, but that's what makes them good characters, and I hope to see their growth as both their series continue.